game. I had always just had fun doing it. Like I'm a plant guy. My degrees are in botany and soil sciences. So, you know, it was just a natural progression. I really like the plant. I like what it does for me. So to my mind, you know, and back then in the late 80s, early 90s, you kind of got what you got. You know, you had a friend go to Amsterdam and sneak some seeds back. That was great, but that was the only time you really kind of knew what you were getting.
Bill, I'm with iHemp Michigan. iHemp Michigan's mission is to educate, inform, and promote the research, development, and cultivation of industrial hemp here in Michigan. iHemp Michigan advocates for wellness in people and the planet through hemp, and it begins with the farmer. Please support our advocacy and join iHemp Michigan. Business members receive a listing in our business directory, which is actively searched by thousands of visitors. Visit www.ihempmichigan.com. And unfortunately, I have to leave, so I'm going to turn things over to you, Blain, to run the show, and I will see everyone next week.
Okay, the train wreck starts now. So
that's it. Oh boy, I'm keeping my fingers crossed. So
bye, Dave.
Nice to meet
Thanks,
you.
Dave.
Thanks,
meet you, sir.
for playing with us.
All right. Well, Mike, maybe let's start out with you. You got a little bit of news, maybe from your last show, and then what's coming up next week.
Yeah, absolutely. So yesterday on my show, I'm on the dark side of the plant, the THC side. And so we had a big show about looking at caregivers. There's a sort of a movement afoot in the Michigan legislature led by some very large cannabis companies to drive the caregivers out of the market, essentially. I mean, they call it all different things, but in the end, that's really what they're trying to do. And it was the caregivers who actually created the medical marijuana market here in Michigan in 2012. And so, you know, it's obviously a power play. So we explored that yesterday on my show, which is 420 Post. You can find that at mitechnews.com. We have the whole show on demand. So if you didn't watch it live, you can watch it now. And that's a big issue right now. It's really turned into they've kicked a hornet's nest in the state, and all the original players in the state are like not real happy about this. And so we explored that whole thing. I'm just the moderator. I take no position, right? So the other thing I want to mention is there's something really cool coming up on June 12th, which is this Saturday. There's a live virtual cannabis job fair. A lot of people want to get into the cannabis business for one reason or another, but of course in the state is exploding. We're probably going to do $2 billion in adult use sales this year, maybe more, who knows. And so there's lots of companies coming into the state. They all need bud tenders, they need growers, they need processors, and a lot of folks want to get into that, but may or may not have experience. So the job fair, again, virtual. You can find that information at mimarijuanareport.com. Free. Can't beat that. At least you can find out what's available, what kind of skills you need. There may be entry-level jobs available. I'm not sure. But, again, we want to help the industry grow. And right now it's just like everybody else. They're having a heck of a time trying to find enough workers to staff up as we come out of the pandemic. And everybody, you know, we've been hibernating now for 14, 15 months, but now it's pedal to the metal. Everything's going really fast. And, you know, I've got multiple stories coming in from all over the country about how there's this big labor shortage for everything. So this is a chance if you want to get into a fast-growing industry that pays pretty well, all things considered, then I would check out this free job fair that'll be on the 12th on Saturday.
And then you said, Mike, that's virtual, you said?
Yeah, it's all virtual. You don't have to travel. You just plug in. And again, that information is at mimarijuanareport.com. If you and check it out, sign up for it. I think you got to sign up in advance. I'm probably going to sign up just so I can see what's going on and who's doing what kind of thing. And because I'm always looking for great story ideas for our publication or for our streaming video show. So again, if you want to get into this incredibly fast-growing business, I would recommend check it out.
Well, you know, Mike, it could be a second job for you. You know?
God, I don't need any more second jobs. I mean, my problem is I don't have a life. I mean, all I do is work, so I'm trying to rectify that. But
what's your show next week, Mike?
Next week, we're going to be featuring some folks from CannaCon, which is going to be in Detroit at the end of the month. I think it's the 25th and 26th of June. I'm looking at my calendar as I look over on the wall. And so we're going to have the marketing person from CannaCon. I'm going to be there. I'm a media sponsor. I haven't, like everybody else, I haven't really been out and about much in the last 15 months. So I'm really looking forward to seeing a lot of people that I've just been dealing with on a virtual basis or through emails or phone calls. And so I'll be there with my crew and our cameras, and we'll be looking for great stories to shoot for all of our various publications. And so, again, that's next week. We do 420 Post live on Facebook. It starts at 1 o'clock, runs till 2. And then if you can't watch the show live, we always have it up right away on demand at mimarijuanareport.com, and you can find out what you couldn't watch live. Yeah. So, but that'll be a fun show, and I'm really looking forward to. Finally, the summer is opening up here. There's a lot of events that are now moving forward where you can actually see real people, and there's a whole bunch of stuff going on. And it's good for the industry. We're all going to get together, and I know crazy things will happen, but maybe some great business things will happen as well.
All right. Well, thanks, Mike. Appreciate that.
Sure.
So a little bit of news I'll start with now, and then I'll bring in some at the end of the show too. Hemp at the Crossroads is still a go at this point. Last year they couldn't do that, but it's December 1st through the 3rd in Plainfield, Indiana. And they do have, if you're looking to be a sponsor or being an attendee, a booth there, exhibitor, reservations under booth, you can sign up for that now, register for that now. So that's available coming up there. Also, a couple other things. We want to know that our friends at U.S. Hemp Roundtable have made it easy for you to connect to a U.S. Senator and ask that they co-sponsor the Hemp Access and Consumer Safety Act, which will establish a legal and regulatory pathway for the sales of hemp-derived extract products, such as CBD dietary supplements and food and beverage additives. So if you haven't done that yet, if you go to U.S. Hemp Roundtable, it's pretty easy to find. Where you click on there, it goes right to our senators. And we need everybody's help to be able to get that pushed through so we can get the CBD market open up and safe for everybody. Also, if you're interested, if you're growing this year and you want to get into the Midwestern Hemp Database, they're accepting applications for the 2021 season. You have until July 16th. The application period closes on July 16th for that. Also, remember this year, under the new under the new USDA final rules that came out, if you're growing this year, you do need to register your crop at the FSA office. That's the Farm Service Agency office. Pretty easy to do, but you might want to do that ahead of time just to make sure you get through. Sometimes you got to bring in some documentation. Maybe if you're renting the ground, you got to bring in a lease, those kind of things. But pretty simple process. You're going to get a cool map on the end of it when you're all done with that. But you do need to remember to do that. The deadline for that is July 15th. And if you've got your crop in now, I would say contact them and get that process going. So you're not just running up to the last date there with that. But also talking about expos, we are in full planning mode right now for the 2022 Midwest iHemp Expo. It's going to be held at the Lansing Center where we had the first one at. And then we're also having the Radisson Hotel. We'll have a special rate there available through them. Friday night, we'll be having the second annual Hemp Eat Awards. Only this one, we'll be able to have a live party and dinner. And so it'll be a really fun time for everybody. So more information will be coming out soon on that. Just want you to make sure that you save the date for that. So with that, I think we'll get into our speaker here. We got Joe and Victoria from 7 Leaf Genetics. You know, we all know that genetics has played a huge, huge part of this whole thing. And last year, I heard Indiana, 20% of their crop went hot in Indiana. I don't know exactly what percentage it was in Michigan, but So Joe was a longtime plant enthusiast. He started experimenting with hybridization cannabis back in the early 90s. His first hybrid was a success, yielding a large producing plant that's cold tolerant and has amazing taste as well. It was the king, so he named it Elvis. Then I'm not quite sure, maybe they want to share the story or not, but somehow he got involved out in Oregon back in 2015. And did you meet Victoria that way? But we can talk about that later, Mike.
No, Vic and I were married at that point.
At that
but,
time. Okay.
Sure. Oregon was my first foray into like kind of the legalized breeding, if you will. Oregon had a strong medical market at that point, and I knew a guy that had started essentially a cannabis incubator where he had bought a farm and set up some greenhouses and an indoor grow. And they wanted to make their own strains and hybridize some cannabis and, create the fire and sell that. So I started flying back and forth and kind of helping them, get that up and running. And the growers and I find this a lot as more states come online, there's a big difference between growing in your basement with a couple thousand watts and growing 1,000 square feet or 1,500 square feet. And they ran into a lot of trouble just scaling up and getting that big. So the end result was they didn't really produce any new strains or anything like that. But I used the time. I was able to perfect my processes and how I do things. And that was when I first really got into hemp. Was Oregon has a real strong hemp market, a long history as far as the market goes. And I met some great people out there that were doing, had some great strains, and it's from a breeder standpoint, it's a much more everything you're growing is not a polyhybrid. Everything you're breeding is.
So let's start back. When you were kind of doing some things here. So what fascinated you, or how did you decide to get into the genetics game?
Well, it wasn't even get into the genetics game. I had always just had fun doing it. Like I'm a plant guy. My degrees are in botany and soil sciences. So, it was just a natural progression. I really like the plant. I like what it does for me. So to my mind, and back then in the late 80s, early 90s, you kind of got what you got. You had a friend go to Amsterdam and sneak some seeds back. That was great, but that was the only time you really kind of knew what you were getting. So everything out there was kind of, and then the 90s, the Northern Lights and the skunks and stuff like that, the diesels came around. And then you could start, kind of tracking the lineage. But to my mind, no one was really playing with the high CBD strains. Everybody was trying to breed for high THC. So, when I first started working out there and I met these guys that were into hemp, to my mind, from a breeding standpoint, it was a much more natural progression because they're, they haven't all been polyhybridized 10 times over, and that's what's going on in the THC market. There's no real true strains, out there anymore, really.
So, so that kind of naturally led then when the hemp market came out, you got involved with that. So was there any, now are you doing it mostly for the CBD and the smokable market?
We do. We concentrate on the cut flower market. Terpene profile is real important to us. And, just, excuse me, we like things that are,
we're doing the cut flower market in Portland, and in Vermont we do seed. So Joe's got two genetics. I just want to add that in. There's two different, in one state we do hemp seed, and in one state we do flower.
So
it's THC in the rec market.
Yeah, when you say hemp seed, are you talking about seed for sale?
Yes, for the cut flower market.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm going to bring up the website here just a minute while we're talking here. See if I can.
It's 7leafgenetics.com.
Yeah.
There have been other companies that have come online since ours who have the same name, and you'll notice it's ours because Joe and I are we're in the bio, and it says Vermont, and it's 7leafgenetics.com.
All right. Let me see. Dave can usually screw this up pretty well. All I can do with this. There we go.
Yeah, we're still kind of playing around with the seeds here in Michigan. Blain is much more expert on that than I, but what would you recommend here? I mean, and does the seed that you recommend, say, what works in Michigan doesn't work in Alabama or Kentucky, or how does that all play out?
That's absolutely true. To my mind, like we're here in northern Vermont, so I would say that northern Michigan would be a similar microclimate. There may have some differences, but it's generally the same. You have cold winters. In October, you can see snow flying, that sort of thing. It's it's usually wet. So the soils may be different. The plants may take it up a little differently, but generally speaking, you'd want something that is cold tolerant, that's going to finish early, and is boisterous resistant, right? Because it's wet and moist, right at harvest season. It's very similar in the Pacific Northwest as well. That's their rainy season. They deal with a lot of the same situations. We've had some outreach from like Oklahoma and Texas where it's a completely different ball game. You need
very
heat.
dry,
You need
very
heat
dry.
tolerant. All the
Right.
exact opposite of what you're looking for. So
The only similarity, if I could just chime in there, that Joe discovered in the two markets was wind.
Wind?
And wind. So, wind, I don't know, but yeah, the winds in Vermont, you can lose a crop on a really windy day because we get very, very high winds.
Huh.
And as they do in Oklahoma, et cetera. And so that is something to take into account when you're looking at your crops. That is something that Joe taught me, was to really be taking into account not only the plant and its needs and the temperature, but how much wind is there and what size and structure of the plant is he going for when he's doing his breeding. So I just had to jump in there because I find it fascinating that he thinks that way. So.
It's the first time I ever heard that. So I don't know. Blaine's heard that before. Have you heard that before, Blaine?
I've heard, a lot of times people have this thing about clones versus plants versus seeds. So a lot of times they say that the clones don't have a taproot, so it's more likely that you're going to have a little problem maybe with wind or have to string them up, so to speak, tie them up. So I've heard that. I have not seen that myself, but when I planted the year I did it, we did it from plants, seedlings.
So plants do. Cuttings don't have taproots. That's the advantage of a seed. Mostly, that's not what I was concentrating more. That's more a function of the plant being able to attract water. Be able to constantly have water. What I was interested in, especially with concern to wind, was our first year that we started selling seed in 2016 into the market. Our plants were 10, 12 feet tall. We had a farmer that planted 20 acres and lost about 3 of them to a windstorm because they were just these huge, monstrous plants. So that's when we were like, all right, let's dial it back. What's actually better is a 4-foot plant that's kind of bushy, that's going, that has not necessarily that all our plants are a big bulbous type thing. And I find that that's more, especially when you're growing in a row, they kind of grow into each other. They kind of offer each other support. And you have the big Christmas tree cola types. Those are the ones I find once they start going, they'll go over. So, when you have high wind areas, that's what we've been noticing, or it's at least something that you can take into consideration when you're breeding. And it's another thing I like about hemp is you're breeding for all these different regions of the country, whereas with the THC market, which is fun and all that, but mostly guys are just breeding for THC content.
Yeah, you're just a little bit higher in our. Well, I guess not.
He usually is.
Yeah, but you're describing it sounds a lot like.
I meant your location is a little bit higher on the latitude than where most of Michigan is. What I meant by that. So.
Right. Yeah, we're 40, 42, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. What you were describing is kind of like how the fruit orchards do in Michigan, cherry orchards, apple orchards. They're smaller trees and they all are grouped together versus a very large tree kind of thing.
Absolutely. So. And, one of the things that, we played around with, we haven't done it in the past couple of years, but we used to maintain it's like a nursery, to kind of play around with different varieties. And one of the things that we really liked, and this speaks to those trees as well, is we grew a lot of companion planting and let the plants kind of trade the oils back and forth. And you'd be surprised at the hints that the basil picked up. That we grew like 8,000 basil plants around, I don't know, maybe 200 pot plants, 200 hemp plants. And it's just amazing. that's what I find interesting about the plant is
Really?
that, all these different, oh yeah,
You can
absolutely.
Pick up
excite
some of
those
the terpene
terpene profiles.
Absolutely.
They pick up some of the terpene profiles, huh? Wow.
Yep.
And think about the bees also play a huge part of that as well, because they're literally, when they're the bees love the hemp plants.
Mhm.
And we certainly see them circulating through all of the companion plants as well.
Mhm.
And I definitely felt, and you know what, we didn't, at that time they weren't doing the terpene profiles and testing, but
Mhm.
I think we have some of the terp profiles, and I think those plants produced more terpene
So
that
I've
had
got
the
on the
companion
screen
plants with
right
them.
on the screen right now. I've got your the three.
The three. Yep.
Now, are those CBD or are
Those
those?
are all CBD. The one thing I would say is we don't run our Guillaume Lure anymore because it was starting to run a little hot, and by hot I mean just over 1%.
Okay.
So even with the new rules, now that doesn't mean you were still getting, this is a 5-foot plant. It yield, people are still yielding 1.5 pounds. You were just taking it way earlier than it was actually mature.
Mhm.
And then that means you just gotta stop that degradation right then and there. So it just put a lot of extra pressure on it. It wasn't worth getting any farmers in trouble or making them disappointed with the end result.
Speaking of 1%, do you think that's likely to go through? I mean, there's a lot of pressure to change that,
It
but
it it to my mind it should, and I think that's what we were speaking to a little earlier about the ratios.
Mhm.
I think that's the simple fact is a THC plant and a CBD plant they're the same plant. It's just a different chemotype,
Mhm.
right? So eventually the administration and the powers that be are going to realize that we're talking about the same plant and kind of make it all one market.
Yeah.
That's what, because we, even on the West Coast where we produce for the rec market, we like to play with what we found is even when Oregon had 1 million pounds of extra hemp, extra THC, flower a couple years ago. While most of that was lower grade, flower, it was also the stuff you could get everywhere. We grow, the Cinex, and we grow the 9-pound hammer and strains that people actually use for sleep and for anxiety and for headaches.
Hmm.
When you have a patient or someone that's using that truly medicinally, that's the most loyal patient. They'll seek out your product, especially if you put a good product out there. And that's what I mean about, eventually this market has got to come, that CBD or that THC number in hemp has got to come up even higher. And you'll start seeing those ratios. And I think that's what, I think that's where the future is headed.
The reason from a medical standpoint that we're talking about ratios for maybe some listeners who aren't as familiar is because CBD tends to temper the effects of THC. And so when we're looking at something that's a 1-to-1, if I have 1 gram of THC and I have 1 gram of CBD, I'm going to be able to keep that psychoactive effect really in check.
Yeah, we just launched a project called Hero where we're working with vets who have PTSD, and we've been surveying them to kind of, what do you think kind of thing. We're in the really early stages. And a lot of them are saying, look, I don't need to get any higher. I mean,
they need something to calm them down.
Yeah, they need something to calm them down. And so I'm very interested to hear more about this. Maybe we can talk after the show about that.
Sure.
Yeah, because we're looking for, and we even have a 5-acre hemp farm that we're training vets how to be hemp farmers on. And
That's great.
they've already planted for the season, but I mean, it's certainly something to take a look at going forward, because that's exactly what we're looking for, is something to kind of mellow them out, not only them, but everybody else for that matter, versus the big bugaboo is everyone's, hemp, I'm going to get high. No, not unless you smoke a telephone pole worth or something,
Right. I was
so
going to say, the
it's
dosages to take an effect
it's still an
are
educational.
actually quite high. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
And
yeah.
that becomes not affordable.
Sure.
So, given the market, to really take effect on a medicinal level, like for instance, I need CBD. I'm on chemotherapy right now. It interferes with my sleep cycle. And I started maybe with 10 milligrams of CBD and it was not helping. I've had to go up to 350.
Oh my God.
That's my number, right?
Wow.
And I get a full night of sleep and I'm not hungover and I feel like more of a not cancer patient, right?
Yeah.
So anxiety patients, I've done a lot of consulting medical cannabis consulting, and a lot of the patients I've had have had to take well over 50 milligrams to have a desired effect on things like anxiety, but particularly PTSD, because you're looking at brain balance there, and there's an amygdala, there are different hormones that are being released, and the endocannabinoid system really, if you want to repair it from trauma, requires these much higher levels.
Huh. Well, and let's talk about edibles for a minute then. So, you're working with the smokable part of that, but are you getting the same benefit if you know the ratio or the percentage in edibles? Because a lot of people can't smoke. They'd rather use something else.
Different.
Yeah.
So each way of taking the plant in interacts with the endocannabinoid system differently. So sometimes with someone, what we're going to recommend is a topical, an edible, and a tincture. So if they can't smoke, okay? Tinctures have a different delivery method, even though it might seem like an edible. If you're using a sublingual, or if you're using a carrier like a grain alcohol, you're getting a different absorption rate and a different onset time.
Huh.
And so there's different ways when you're talking about like people who can't smoke. What we do with, as bud tenders and as, people, caregivers, it's our job to sort of work with them and make a tincture, make an oil, find an edible. And sometimes the answer is not cooking and decarboxing, but actually going to raw form and taking the plant in raw, putting it in smoothies, etc. It just depends on the disorder and that person, the way that person receives the medicine. Yeah.
Well, for me, for instance, I'd never call myself an athlete, but I still bike, I still run, go to the gym. I'm less inclined to smoke because I want the lungs, I got to have that, right? But I've had really uneven experiences with edibles. Some of them were like, oh my God, and the other ones you go, I don't feel a thing. So, I think that's some concern out there among a lot of people on that as well. So
I would ask them, the other thing to talk about is, if you're using for medicine, you're not pulling a tube, you're not doing a bong hit.
All right.
Right. And so the amount that you would be inhaling should be tempered and much smaller. You're not smoking all day. It's those habits that create the problem with smoking and the lung. The lungs itself as an organ, I promise you, can handle 2 or 3 draws, up to 5 draws off of any type of smokable, because your lungs, that's not going to degrade your tissue. And remember, what you're inhaling has high anti-carcinogenic properties in it.
Oh, good point. Yeah.
Each cannabinoid has, these different effects that are anti-inflammatory. And that's why we see much more lung cancer in people who smoke cigarettes, cigars, those types of things than you do with somebody who's only smoked marijuana.
I've never smoked cigarettes. That's one nasty habit I never picked up,
Exactly. So just, when we're talking about the inhalants and to people, it's like, well, let's all just be really transparent about usage and how you're using when you're recommending things to people. Encourage them to be honest with you so you can guide them in the right way.
Well, and I would say that's the most important thing too, is, it's about matching the right strain with the right ailment when you're talking about using it medicinally, right? Exactly. Because if you don't want someone to come in, to a dispensary and be like, oh, I got anxiety, and you've got some bud tender, and it's like, hey, we got some great dog walker, and dog walkers, that'll make you in the corner chewing your nails, and that's the exact opposite experience you want. So not only do the plants need to be bred in such a way, and on both sides of the equation, on THC and the CBD side, they need to be bred in such a way that you have a general idea of what the experience is going to be. So that you can, and then you need to train the bud tenders and the people that are actually interacting with the general public and the patients as to what strains and what you're actually looking for in a medical strain.
And you want a consistent experience. That's why people go to McDonald's or they go to the chain restaurants, because they're never going to have the same thing every time, right?
It's why we should work on naming strains. And it's not for ownership or genetics or anything, but the names should really reflect either the genetics that you can refer to, so you can be like, oh, what is this going to do to me? Right. Or the name should really explain what it's going to do to you or what it's for. otherwise I find it's really hard when people go into a dispensary. They're like, it sounded so good, Tangerine Dream, but I wasn't sleepy. You know, like,
No, I was like,
and
I was hovering in the corner, biting my nails or something. That wasn't what I was looking for, you know. So
yeah, and they're like, you know, people just get so confused.
When you guys sell your seed, is it feminized seed?
It is. We sell all feminized seed. We sell to the hemp market, so we sell mostly to craft farmers. You know, the 5 to 20, 30 acre farmer. You know, that's a 30 acre farm is a pretty big farm for us. You know, so we sell 5,000-7,000 seeds at a clip, and that's it's all feminized. They want a standardized product, right? And that's that was one of the biggest things that confuses me between the two industries is, in the hemp market, when I sell 5,000 seeds to a farmer, he wants 5,000 plants that all look essentially the same size. They're all going to do the same thing. They're all going to finish the same time. They're going to give them the same CBD content. They're all going to be standard. The THC market, you got F1s and F2s, and and then it's crossed again, and you're getting that. There's no consistency in that. So I don't know how to stop that, but that's the game right now. It's unappealing, but that is the game.
When Joe says F1 or F2, again, for listeners who might not know, we're using breeding terms, and we're referring to literally the lineage of the plant. And when you're planting out your 5 or 1,000 or 20,000 seeds, you want all the plants to be as close together, but not close space-wise, but genetically uniform as possible, because you're going to be harvesting. And when you get over an F4 or higher, you have a lot of stability. Whereas an F1 or F2, somebody just made that plant recently, and you have no idea which phenotype is going to express and how it's going to happen.
And generally, you'll get 3 or 4 different phenos that are going to express. And to my mind, that's the fun part, because then you're out there in a field looking at what is the best plant, what is the one that stands out above all the rest, because that's the one you want to breed with. You want to breed, when you're making something new, you want to pick the best of the best. So that's when you go out, you pheno hunt it. Once you have that, you have your male donor, you can go ahead and start back crossing. So you like this plant, how you like its structure, you like its scent, its taste, it gets you good and high, it does all the things that you want it to. Then you can go ahead and take the same pollen from the same male and kind of back cross it again, pollinate it again, take those seeds, grow them out. That's going to give you a less incidence of all these different phenotypes. It's going to give you a more of the same phenotype, more of that same structure, that same plant that you're looking for. You just take the same thing. You go ahead and take that same pollen from the male, pollinate it again. You take those seeds, you grow those seeds out. Now you're at an F3, right? You've done that 3 times. Now we're at F4.
Are you looking at a 3-4 year time frame here, or
absolutely?
That's right.
Greenhouse.
So you can push it. When we're simply trying to stabilize the seed, we've bred a plant and we're just trying to make sure that it's going to do the same exact thing every time. You don't need to grow a whole field, right? And we don't have a whole field to grow. We're a 4,000 square foot indoor facility. So, but once we know that we like these genetics, we can then go ahead and back cross and speed that whole thing up, because we know we're not growing this whole field. We know we can grow a male and a female, pop it. So as soon as they're mature enough to go set into flower, you put a tray into flower, and you pollinate everything up. That's your back cross, right? So you can kind of speed that up. But when you're trying to breed and trying to really look for something special, you want to take your time. You don't want to try and rush that and just kind of get it wrong. A lot of times, one of the big things I look for is, disease resistance and bug resistance. There are strains out there. There are plants, that will, on an indoor side, not get mites. There are ones that are much more resistant to powdery mildew, on the hemp side of things. Boitress. So you don't know that until you've grown that plant out. You've kind of looked at it in a rainy season, in a dry season. So it does take a couple of years to really kind of stabilize and get a strain to the point where you can sell 10,000 of them, and those 10,000 plants are going to create 10,000 essentially same plant.
I see you also have services you do. You have some consulting services you do, things like that.
Yeah.
So
I do.
Here's the $1 million question, or I should say $64,000 question. So you can help me grow, you can help me pick out the right genetics and stuff, but we all have that problem when it comes to sales. So can you help with the consulting on the sales end as well for farmers?
I don't. The first question I ask any potential new client is, where do you intend to sell it? We have friends that broker it and kind of buy it here and there. We're happy to introduce like the farmers that grow our genetics. We try and introduce them to friends that we know that are processors or that are are looking at for the cut flower, the little dog walker cigarettes and stuff like that. If we know someone, we're happy to introduce people, but we don't get involved in brokering or buying and selling or anything like that. We're a seed company, and we like to try and keep ourselves focused on seeds and focused on breeding, and not try and stay in our lane.
And the consulting Joe does, people
Right.
really come to him for the grow advice.
Right.
Because we're very clear up front. Like, I even tried to make it a company rule, but Joe vetoed me, that we would not sell one seed to anybody who didn't have an end game. Because to me, it's such a carbon footprint. I mean, to grow the plant, to put it in, to harvest it, especially in a farm situation. And we were doing a lot of dairy farm conversions here because the dairy industry had a huge, was just closing down here in Vermont. And these farmers needed a conversion. Anyway, point is, they would put all this money into growing it and harvesting, and they had no end game.
Yeah, there you go.
And it was heartbreaking. I mean, these people took out loans on their freaking farms.
Yeah, it's sad.
It was, I mean, that we didn't sell them seed and do that to them. We went in post facto when we're trying to help. But I really can't stress that enough to anybody in either side of the industry, rec or med or cannabis, hemp, whatever. Have an end game.
Or at least have an idea of an end game. Like, at least have some leads, and it's not going to sell itself. You're going to need to go out there and push it. The market, the industry is too new for it to be. It's not mature enough to be able to go and just have buyers that are going to just buy it all. You're going to need to make, you're going to need a network. You're going to need to build some relationships.
And get ready to be limber and bend.
Yeah, because especially as a farmer.
So your seeds, is it just for medicinal type purposes, or do you grow seeds for fiber or other things like that?
So we do run we're about to launch our fiber seed. We do have 2 fiber seeds that we're going to launch, and then we're also working with a lot. We're doing a couple small plots of bioremediation. And using the plants really good at pulling heavy metals, especially up. Yeah. So I've been playing around with a couple strains that have really high silica contents, which seems to kind of draw the metals more than others. And we're just trying to do some research and some experiments on that as to which varieties work better than others at that. But most of them are the grain varieties, I've noticed.
What was that we had? Was it Lake Superior State College we had on a couple of weeks ago, Blain, that had that experimental farm, and that was one of the things, because they're up in the Upper Peninsula is a mining area, and
exactly.
the ground really is screwed up there.
We work. One of our partners has some friends in Peru, and they're thinking about doing the same thing. All the copper mines and the metal mines down there, growing hemp around those mines, making them grow, or having them grow hemp around those mines to pull all that toxicity out of it.
The thing is, it's funny. People still, they take the remediation hemp and they're like, what do I do with it? They want to burn it. They want to do something. We have to explain to them, you burn it now.
Well, you can make it into hempcrete or building materials.
But where in the East, I don't know about you guys, but I can tell you this, people who we don't have a processing facility in Vermont or Maine, etc. So to get your hemp converted over into fiber or crete or any other product outside of an oil extraction, you literally are now going to have to package it up and get it across state lines and start driving it around to a processing facility, of which where do you guys have a hempcrete? Like, where's your nearest hempcrete facility?
Blain.
What I'm looking at is a question that's coming in, so I apologize.
Oh, no worries.
Sorry.
So your question to me was on the decortication.
I was just wondering about hempcrete and fiber.
If you're a processor or a hemp farmer and you wanted to process your your grain fiber into grain or into hempcrete? Where's the closest processing plant that, Victoria was speaking to how we don't have a grain fiber or a hempcrete fiber processing plant in New England that I know of.
Wow.
Yeah. So right now what's happening here, and I think other places too, but we're developing quite a little market in the plastics industry as one.
Excellent. That's a huge issue.
And the other thing, which I just talked about to the guy the other day, is he's actually selling the product to people that are making it with soil. So like we have vermiculite and stuff in the soil right now for like your grow. Well, they're finding that when they put the hemp fiber, the hemp hurd in, that it really makes a great soil. So there's some
soil amendment.
Soil amendment. It retains the water. Of course, then dries out, and then when you fill it back up, we'll take water more. I am able to do decortication of the CBD plants, and I don't know anybody else that can do that right now. Everybody else is working on decortication of the long, tall, regular fiber stuff.
Right.
I can take the CBD plants and I can separate them, and I'm making
shuck them out.
Yeah, I'm making that into bedding for horses and small animals, that kind of stuff, as well as part of it's going into the plastics industry as well there. So, and then the grain part. Now the grain part is coming on right now. The problem that we have is that we have to do all this testing with USDA and to be able to use this for feed for animals. Now, if you're feeding your own animals, pets, that kind of stuff, chickens you're harvesting yourself, beef you're growing yourself, that kind of stuff, you can feed it to your animals on your own. But if it's going into the marketplace, then right now it's not a authorized supplement to be used for feed, but it's coming. We know.
I'd say that's being considered, isn't it?
Oh yeah, Right now we know that the results we're getting back on a lot of the test stuff is just showing that the animals are
loving it,
doing better, less disease. They just seem to have a little better attitude about life sometimes.
Say less stress.
Stress, yeah, let's put it that way. It's not that they're getting high, that's not it, but it's just the amino acids and the fatty acids and all the micronutrients that are in the hemp that just does this for them. It's just a natural thing. It's not the THC that's doing this, because in the hemp seed itself, there is no THC, right? I take the seed and I make hemp oil out of it, hemp seed oil out of it. Yep. So I cold press it to do that. So all of those things. Then the cake that's left over from that, we're going to be able to use that for hemp protein powder, which is available now. You can go to any health food store and buy that. So a lot of the other products are going to come along here, and they are coming along. It's just that train.
It takes some time to mature.
Yeah, just trains.
Yeah, it's really the infrastructure issue and the buyer on the other end. Again, I'm not a farmer, but I've been on the show long enough to know that farmers don't grow something where they don't have a contract with a buyer on the other end, and that's right. The missing element right now. So
circles that you saw behind
perfectly put. I agree.
Yeah, the 3 circles that you saw behind Dave's head earlier before he left, those are hemp frisbees. So they're 25% hemp material.
35% actually.
Is it 35?
Yeah.
Okay, 35. So so that's coming, and then his wall was the hempwood wall, made in Kentucky. So all of these products are coming. We're going to have on June 26th, we're having a hempcrete workshop. And it's going to be here in Michigan at the Critter Farm, and the kids are going to make bricks, and we're going to use those bricks on a wall and a little fundraiser for the Critter Farm. So we're having a lot of fun with that. I was going to ask you about your seed. Since you're in Vermont and up in there, have you tried any of your seed down in the hotter climates? Let's say, down in Alabama or Mississippi. Are you finding the difference?
There's definitely a difference. We have clients as far south as like New Jersey, Pennsylvania, like that's a mid-Atlantic region. Mm-hmm. So I'd love to get down in there. I have some strains that I think will do well. They certainly don't do well in the cold. So they tend to like it moist. So I think that they would do well, but I don't have a partner or a farmer or anything like that down south where we could even start trying them out. But I was talking with some gentlemen out on the West Coast, and they're trying to, the carbon sequestration is going to be coming online here pretty soon. And hemp is a wonderful plant for that. So I've been working with these guys, and we were talking about kind of advise different regions of the area what strains to grow that are best for carbon sequestration, and kind of develop a list of that. And that kind of speaks right into what we were talking about, where, I'd love to get down south. I do have some strains that I think would do well down there. But again, you're talking about a year and a half at a minimum of testing them and making sure that they're going to do well. And, you want to make sure that they don't do well in a good growing season. You want to see how they do in a bad growing season.
Yeah.
When it's a horrible harvest and there's snow on October 4th, and are they going to take it, or are they just going to die? Like that sort of thing. That's really what you want to see, because that's going to tell you what, if the plant's really going to be able to stand up. I see a lot, and especially in the hemp market. It's a couple of years ago, at least here in New England, a lot of hemp farmers were like, wow, the seeds, it's relatively easy to make, right? And you just throw some, you put pollen on the pistils and let it fly. But to get it stabilized and to get it there is a much longer, much more entailed endeavor. And I think, at least around here, there was a lot of last year and the year before, just a lot of substandard seeds, not substandard. I mean, they grew a plant and all that, but they weren't the same plant. And some were hot and some were big and some were, they weren't steady throughout. And that's, again, when you're buying 5,000 seeds, that's what you want is, an even crop.
Well, and even for harvesting and maintaining and
exactly
all that stuff, it needs to be a uniform, corn's pretty much the same, right? When you grow the one variety of corn, what you're going to get, how it's going to be, and that kind of stuff.
I will say this, as the farmers, please give breeders some slack. We've been at this, especially on the hemp side, for a mere maybe 7 years now. Corn's been bred for over 100 years. They've been breeding that out and sterilizing it and getting it, inbred lines and stuff like that. Hemp's a pretty new market still. So, the true breeding, selective breeding, it takes time to kind of get hold and to really be rock solid. And it takes people doing it the right way. You can't just,
Well,
1 year and then add new.
Right. And another thing I want people to do too, especially as you brought that up, is you need to respect the work and hard work and time and energy that the breeders put into this. And, when I sell hemp grain for grain or for fiber, there's an agreement that they make, that they're not going to, keep the seed over. They're not going to sell the seed if they keep it for the next year, that kind of stuff. So, be mindful of those and why those are in place, because if we don't have that protection in there for the breeder, well, then what's the incentive for them to be able to do anything as well, right?
Exactly. And I think that, just the more, it adds transparency. And I think that that's the more transparency you can add from beginning to end, the better off everybody is, because this is it is an emerging market. And, there are going to be mistakes made. There are going to be, just genuine, mistakes. And, they don't, I see it a lot on the West Coast. All these guys are trying to sue each other because these seeds didn't come out right, or they didn't, the germ rate, it's just, it's a mess. And it's going to come it's going to come, I'm expecting it on the East Coast, but I'm sure it's coming to the Midwest as well. All that. Exactly. So, I think that it's tough because it is such a new market. It's hard to, generally you'll go to an old established company that you're like, okay, they've been in business for 100 years. I know that they, sell this thing and it's going to be what they say it is. With, hemp seeds, Oregon CBD is, 10 years old now. They're, essentially the gold standard. They're 10 years old. We've been in business for 6. It's not, we've been in business a while. We've spent 2 years in research and development before we even sold our first seed. And that's essentially what it takes. There's no, especially when you're doing selective breeding, it takes time.
So the question that came in that I've got here is, if you're growing indoors, does your region matter like it might if you're growing outdoors?
Your region doesn't matter, but what I would say is that you'd want a strain that is designed for either like a greenhouse or an indoor operation, right? So you don't want a plant that's 5 feet tall, that's going to be 5-6 feet around, and try and grow that in an indoor, in a 400 square foot space. You'll get 10 plants in there. So you're much better off growing a much smaller plant or something that you could put in, into a scrog or something like that. So no, region wise, it's not, because you're going to be keeping the environmentals in that room or in the greenhouse the same. I think it's more a matter of the size of the plant and, again, the structure, what you're looking for. At that point, I'd want to, try and grow smaller plants that are just going to put 3 or 4 big monster colas up. So you'd look for a strain that, you know, it grows in that way.
Okay.
You know, puts a big top cola on there.
He's saying in this instance, gentlemen, that size matters. As well.
You know, it's always
Joe, do you want to respond to that, or?
It's funny when you think about cannabis breeding, it's like the only time, well, it's not only cannabis, but in this plant breeding, it's like, no, you want incest in your plant breeding because it creates stability. Like when I first met Joe and was talking to him about breeding, I was like, that's not okay with people. Why is it okay with plants? It's so interesting to create instability in humans, but stability in plants. I just had to pipe in with my dirty jokes. Thanks.
Yeah, that was good.
Well, we always need levity, that's for sure.
Yeah,
That's right.
Absolutely.
Guys, I want to thank you very much for taking the time out of your schedules and stuff to share a little bit with our viewers, and we appreciate that very much. We're sure that
It was fun.
It'll be a pleasure when we get a chance to meet each other, maybe face to face at some one of these times. And
Yeah, I think we're gonna try and do NCAN, Illinois. There's a couple conferences now that things are opening up again. You know, I do a lot of speaking, and so I just applied for a bunch of different speaking engagements around the Midwest. So hopefully I'll be out there soon.
good.
Hey,
Very
invite
well.
him to your conference in January, Blaine.
Yeah, well, I was just going there.
Ah, okay.
That. And also we have the Hemp Awards, right? Now, last year we didn't have anybody put in for the breeding and the seeds and stuff. So you might want to think about putting stuff in for the Hemp Awards this year.
All right, I'll
That'd
look
be fun.
into it.
Yeah, we gave away a very nice hemp bowl that we had made, turned on a lathe kind of thing. I don't know what we're gonna have this year, but we'll have something pretty cool.
Right.
Maybe hemp.
Something cool.
That's the whole
Excellent.
idea. So, yeah, this was a little bowl that we did.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. So
That's out of the guy out of
Beautiful.
Kentucky, right?
all right. Well, thanks, guys.
Wow.
Again. Mike, anything? I'm gonna get into some other stuff. Mike, anything you want to share before we? Yeah, there was a thank you, Mike, by the way, sent to you for what you're doing for the veterans. I want you to know that. So.
Oh, well, thanks. Yeah, well, you know, my dad was a veteran. My granddad was a veteran. I'm not a veteran. I was during the Vietnam War. I was in college, so I'm not a veteran. But we certainly know that everybody and every family has veterans, and we're trying to help those folks.
So we'll reach out to us after the show because we can definitely talk about certain strains that help with anxiety and depression and all of those things.
Yeah, that's what we're really going
It's-
for. We don't,
It's
like I say, these guys don't need to get any higher. They already,
Exactly
they got
right.
that covered. We want to bring them down and
you want high CBN numbers so that they can sleep. You want high
Right.
CBC
I think you
numbers
guys
so that
just
they're relaxed.
hijacked Blaine's show.
Oh, sorry, Blaine.
Oh,
Oh, we were stepping on Blaine's exit there. Go ahead. Go ahead.
it's-
Blaine, aren't you glad I'm here?
No, you guys are talking about good stuff, and Mike, I think you ought to have them on the show that they can talk about some what those strains do and help people out. You probably have that, but I think they could probably.
That's a
help
good
out.
idea, actually. Yeah, because I have a separate show that's again 420 Post focused on
Right.
the other side of the business, right? So, but still, you know. So.
But like I said, eventually the powers that be are going to realize that we're talking about the same exact plant.
All right.
It's the same plant. It's a cannabis plant.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's just a matter of what compounds it grows or what
Sure.
produces.
So,
So,
I just want to throw out to everybody that June 26th at the Critter Farm in Zealand, we're going to be having the Hempcrete workshop. Great time to bring the kids out. A lot of activities. We're going to make bricks. They'll have some of the farm animals there. The actual farm where they have the animals is called the Critter Barn. They're moving to this new location when everything gets built out there. So we're going to be making hemp bricks. We're going to be making a hemp kind of an artwork, I'm going to call it a piece kind of thing. We're going to have some games. We're going to have some raffles. So it's going to be a fun day, real kid-oriented kind of thing. So please come out if you are in the area and visit us for that. It's going to be a lot of fun. Do mark your date and set your calendar for January 21st and 22nd. That'll be the third, actually. iHemp Midwest Expo at the Lansing Center in Lansing, Michigan. And then the rooms we'll have available for that will be at the Radisson right across the street. They have another new motel they put up as well. But the nice thing about the Radisson is it's connected right to it. So it's always a perfect 65, 72 degrees. You never got to go out in the snow, all that fun stuff. So, and then Friday night will be the big party with the Hempy Award. So we're looking forward to all that fun being done there. So with that, I think we are ready.
The best part of the show now. Stand by, Victoria and Joe. Here it comes. So,
and here's another product too, you guys. If you haven't seen this, this is actually from one of we had them on a while ago. Hemp straws.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm. So, and I thought, I did a little experiment. I kind of put them in water overnight and I thought, well, they'll probably dissolve or kind of be smushy or gooey or whatever. But man, they hold up really, really well.
And what's the company name?
The company name, help me, honey, is
how do I get
GreenTechPlanet.com.
Jordan Henshaw.
And Jordan Henshaw is the owner brain behind everything there. So
in tech.
They're actually shop hemp tensils. If you put in hemp tensils, that's kind of how we first got to know them. They make the forks and the spoons and all that stuff out of hemp plastic.
Excellent. Because speaking of, this is all the more end users that you can touch base with and build networks for. That's how we're going to mature this industry.
Absolutely.
That end, because it all comes back to where you're going to sell your product.
Yeah.
And can you give us the name of that Frisbee company?
iHemp Manufacturing.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And Dave Crabill, if you need to get hold of Dave.
That guy, yeah,
I got his email.
Yeah. He's actually got a lot of other products in development too. He's starting out with Frisbees, but there's other stuff too.
That's
excellent.
So cool.
Well, even like on the THC side, like the amount of plastic containers that our product goes in, like we've got to come up with a better answer than what's currently out there.
Yeah, we've had a number of Dama Corporation out of Colorado. They make some real nice biodegradable. And one thing we learned from their show is there's also another terminology called home compostable.
Home combustible?
Not combustible, but
compostable.
Compostable.
Yeah, you don't want a home combustible.
That would be trouble.
My exploding straw.
This sounds exciting.
What that label means is you can actually throw it into your trash.
Your compost,
it will break down.
Excellent.
So they have some nice, real nice bags that I'm going to use for my hemp hearts when I get into that. So yeah, those kind of things.
Excellent.
So yeah, a lot of good.
Oh, that's wonderful news.
Yeah, a lot of good things are happening there for sure. Yeah, they really are. So
good.
Okay, well, it is that time.
You're gonna like.
You guys have a good rest of your day.
All right.
Oh, hang on, you got to see
hold
this.
on.
I gotta hang on.
I'm sorry. Hold on for this because this is everybody tells me this is the highlight of the show, but I'm not sure about that. But I think
this is the Hemperor with his recipes.
Yeah. So this is strawberry season now here in Michigan, and we picked up some fresh strawberries the other day. It's a short season, right? It's only about 3 weeks, maybe 4 at the most, and so you want to get out there and get them froze. But so we're doing the smoothie of the month. It's strawberry and hemp seed, and I'm really good at this again. I can share my screen, and I'll try to do that. Okay, we want. Why did I not find it? Of course I wouldn't find it.
Careful what you share. So
well, that's what not that I got anything bad on there to worry about, but you never know sometimes what other people can do. I can see it on my tab. Anyways, so this is a strawberry and hemp seed. Strawberry and hemp seed smoothie. A light strawberry smoothie is a perfect way to usher in a season of fresh produce and welcome warmer mornings. In this smoothie, hemp seed takes place of nuts, creating a protein-rich smoothie that provides a dose of omega-3 fatty acids. So it's real simple. I'm going to go back to my screen so I can see this. Here we go. So fresh strawberries.
Yep.
This happens to be 4 cups on this, but to make the smoothie, you use about 2 cups. So this is about 2 servings. Of course, you want to use your healthy hemp hearts, which you want to use there.
Hold it still.
And then you got to use a blender or a really good arm with a fork, so wherever you want to do it. And you put 2 cups of the All strawberries, fresh or frozen, but we want fresh, of course, this time of year. You can put other things into it. This also calls for banana and that kind of thing, but yeah, it's all right. Half a cup of water, 3 tablespoons of hemp seed. I would go heavier on that. I'd put about 4. And then a tablespoon of vanilla extract. And you put it all in the blender and blend it nice and smooth. Comes out to look like something like this.
Yummy.
Yeah.
And my wife, she likes to add the protein powder as well.
Mine too.
Got that going on. And you can also make it with the almond milk or regular milk, or if you want to, you can also make it with hemp milk. And we have a recipe for that on the site as well. So
is that a hemp straw sticking out?
That is a hemp straw sticking in there. Yes, it is.
Appropriate. Okay.
Yes,
Hemp milk is the best milk.
It is. It's very, very rich. I got to learn how to strain it better to make it so it's not so gritty.
Right.
I got to work on that. But I made some quite a ways ago. I made some of that. So.
And all of his recipes are online at iHemp too, you might add. I'll just throw it in
and I have to give credit where credit's due because I'm not all the genius on all this stuff. This was by Amy Chaplin, who made this one. And it was from, if I remember right on here, Food Network is where this came from. So always want to give credit where credit's due. So when I make my own, I always tell you that. I have a great one for hamburgers. That's kind of my specialty is grilling stuff. So that's where mine are the originals, so to speak. So.
Let me ask, does Down on the Farm sell hemp seeds?
Down on the Farm will be selling hemp seeds. Yes, we will be.
Okay, all
We're
right.
working
That's
on
a
that
plug for him. I was helping him out there, So.
Well, and since you mentioned it, Mike, I'm going to do the shameless plug. We do have the hemp seed oil as well. So
Yep.
We make,
Okay.
and I got the new stuff I got was the V1 oil. It's just made out of the hemp heart, so it's a lot. This is kind of dark. The new oil is a lot lighter than this. So we call it hemp seed light. It still has that earthy flavor to it, but it's just a little lighter flavor, a little lighter color. So next week we are going to have Rachel Berry and Eric McKee to talk a little bit about the hemp construction world, especially since we're the following Saturday we have that Hempcrete workshop. So she's going to be talking about that. So we're looking forward to that. It's going to be a nice, fun show. And then I'll be joining everybody on that day from Denver. I finally got the right date that we're going out there now, Mike. And that evening and the next day, they have the Hemp Roundtable has their quarterly meeting. So we're attending that. We're an advocacy group for the Hemp Roundtable. So we thought we'd maybe get this first meeting in with them and enjoy that. So with that, I want to thank everybody for being on today. Again, Joe and Victoria, thanks. Victoria, thanks for letting us know that size does matter. We like to know that. So look forward to the time that we can actually get together and meet you guys face to face. So
yeah, look forward to it. It's an absolute pleasure, guys.
Thanks so much for this
Nice meeting
opportunity.
you.
It was so nice to meet you guys.
All right, well, take care, and we'll see you.
Dave's will say peace and love. We'll
Yep,
see you all next week.
yes, peace and love. Yeah.